while achieving the safe water phase salt concentrations. The sample that is tested should always be the largest fish in the batch. Some states may require this testing. Wisconsin requires that each type of smoked fish be tested at least quarterly. Some processors use dry salting to achieve a safe water phase salt concentration. Key variables in dry salting are the ratio of salt to fish and the duration of salting. The temperature of salting must be below 38 degrees Fahrenheit. The dry salting process must be validated and periodically tested, just as for brining. After brining or dry salting, the fish should be rinsed to remove excess surface salt and reduce numbers of bacteria on the fish. The fish are now ready to be smoked. The heat of the hot smoking process effectively kills disease-causing bacterial cells. In cold smoking, drying and the smoke chemicals kill bacterial cells, although not as effectively as hot smoking does. Neither smoking process will kill Clostridium botulinum endospores. In hot smoking, every part of the fish must receive at least the required amount of heat. The FDA recommends that the temperature of the coldest point of the fish reach at least 145 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes or longer. Wisconsin and Michigan require this same time-temperature combination. Check your state's regulations, as more stringent time-temperature combinations may exist. This plant uses a temperature program that exceeds state requirements.
Corey Gage, meat manager here at Alstown and Country. And this is the smokehouse that we use when I do the smoked fish process here at Al's. This is the smokehouse unit itself. This is the microprocessor. This processor actually does the whole smoking process for me. As you can see here, I have all the different items that I smoke in my smokehouse. They have a code number. And today the smoked fish course is coded 16, which you can see is up here on the processor at this time. When I put my fish in and I record and I set the recorder to go, this smokehouse actually ramps up in relative humidity and in temperature the whole time that the fish are in there being smoked. The fish will smoke for an hour at 110 degrees. Okay, that's just with the fan running and 110 degrees temperature and no humidity in that smokehouse at all. And then I have two smoke cycles. They both run for 2.5 hours. The first temperature is at 130 degrees. Second temperature is at 145. Now while that temperature is being ramped up, so is relative humidity being ramped up in the smokehouse so that the fish don't dry. Also, it helps the smoke to cling to the fish. Okay, and then I have two cook cycles. Again, relative humidity is pretty high, 60 and 75%. And then the machine, the microprocessor, will again ramp up the temperature to 175 for about an hour, and then it'll jump to 185 for the final cook. What the final cook does, it brings my temperature of the fish up to 165 degrees and will hold it there for 30 minutes. Once that occurs, the microprocessor will shut down the entire system, fan will kick off, humidity will kick off, and it'll sound an alarm, let me know that the process has been done.
Wisconsin and Michigan regulations require every smokehouse to be equipped with a properly calibrated continuous temperature recorder connected to a thermocouple. The thermocouple must be inserted in the loin muscle of the largest fish. This fish should be located in the coldest part of the smokehouse. You may need to do some tests to determine the smokehouse cold point. The thermocouple probe must be accurate within 1 degree Fahrenheit, and the chart for the temperature recorder must be marked to identify the date and the type of product being smoked. The time it takes for the internal fish temperature to reach 145 degrees Fahrenheit can be affected by the type of draft in the smokehouse. Those processors whose smokehouses are exposed to the outdoors should pay close attention to the draft and ventilation. Outdoor temperature, wind direction, and wind speed can all affect the temperature in these smokehouses. Smokehouses vary considerably, so take the time to validate your smoking and temperature measurement procedures. Smoking time can also be affected by the size and form of the fish and the arrangement of the fish on smoking racks. For example, rainbow trout and salmon chunks will heat at different rates. Fish which are relatively high in fat, such as chubs, will heat at a different rate than leaner fish. The same temperature monitoring system must be used for cold smoking too. The difference is that, in cold smoking, the temperature must not exceed 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Otherwise, bacteria that outcompete Clostridium botulinum would be killed. Wisconsin regulations specify that cold smoking at 90 degrees Fahrenheit or cooler must not exceed 20 hours, and cold smoking below 50 degrees Fahrenheit must not exceed 24 hours. Cold smoking processes used in Michigan must be specified in an approved variance. Processors may want to move racks of fish to ensure a uniform finished product. This procedure is acceptable during drying prior to smoking. But it is discouraged during smoking because it is difficult to do without removing the thermocouple from the loin muscle of the fish in the smokehouse's cold point. If the thermocouple is removed from the fish, the continuous temperature record is lost, which is a violation of state regulations. The thermocouple must remain in the fish, and that fish must remain in the coldest portion of the smokehouse. It is very important to verify that the recording thermometer is calibrated. Keep records that show the time and date of calibration, the temperatures indicated by the recording and reference thermometers, any corrective actions taken, and who performed the calibrations. Once the fish have been properly smoked, they must be rapidly chilled to prevent growth of any bacteria that contaminate it after smoking. There is also the slim chance that Clostridium botulinum endospores may be present deep in the fish where it is anaerobic. Thus, it is critical that smoked fish always be cooled as quickly as possible to 38 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, so that the endospores cannot germinate. The model code adopted by the Association of Food and Drug Officials recommends that smoked fish be cooled to 70 degrees Fahrenheit or colder within 2 hours, and to 38 degrees Fahrenheit or colder within an additional 4 hours. Smoked fish must be kept at 38 degrees Fahrenheit or colder during all storage and distribution to keep Clostridium botulinum from growing. To rapidly cool smoked fish, you must have adequate refrigeration capacity, and the cold air must freely circulate around the fish. Many processors keep records of the temperatures in the finished product cooler. If possible, only cooked fish products should be in the cooler, so that cross-contamination between raw and smoked fish products cannot occur. If separate coolers are not available, be sure that the smoked fish are as far away from raw fish as possible, and that the raw fish are covered. Under no circumstances should smoked fish ever be stored underneath raw fish. Up to this point, several measures have been taken to ensure smoked fish safety. However, improper packaging and storage can still result in a dangerous product. Packaging must be done in an area in which cross-contamination between raw and smoked fish cannot occur. Employees who have previously worked with raw fish must change outer garments, and all employees must thoroughly wash their hands before handling smoked fish. Some processors require that employees handling smoked fish wear latex or plastic gloves. Care must be taken to ensure that the gloves do not become a source of contamination. Some processors supply hand or glove sanitizing solutions for use to reduce contamination. Equipment used in packaging smoked fish must be properly cleaned and then sanitized immediately before use. A typical sanitizing treatment would be to apply a sodium hypochlorite solution with at least 100 parts per million active chlorine. This plant uses an approved sanitizing spray. All smoked fish must either be refrigerated at 38 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, or be frozen. Proper labeling must be used to tell consumers how to properly store smoked fish. In Wisconsin and Michigan, the refrigerated smoked fish label must warn consumers that the product is perishable and must be stored at 38 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. The label on frozen smoked fish must direct consumers to keep the product frozen. Your state may also regulate the length of time during which refrigerated smoked fish may be sold. Michigan allows 2 weeks, and Wisconsin allows 3 weeks to elapse between processing and sale. These labels show the processing date and last legal sale date as required by Wisconsin regulations. It is very important that batches of smoked fish not be mixed. This is particularly true if the batches involved were produced on different dates and have different display time limits. Your responsibility as a smoked fish processor is to know the appropriate regulations and be sure that your label complies. The key steps for smoked fish safety are 1. Brining or dry salting to achieve the necessary water phase salt concentration in the finished product. 2. Proper hot smoking or cold smoking. 3. Rapid cooling and cold storage. And 4. Proper labeling. Making safe smoked fish isn't rocket science, but it does require care, record-keeping, and validation of your procedures. Knowing your state's regulations and using validated procedures will allow you to make safe, high-quality smoked fish.